Rain had a way of finding every weakness in the house. It slipped through, the old shingles ran down the beams and gathered into a single stubborn drip that landed in the dented pot on the living room floor. Each drop made the same hollow sound, tap, 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 like a clock that only knew 1 hour. Ethan Cole balanced on a wobbly step stool, one palm flat against the stained ceiling. A roll of silver tape hung from his wrist. He could feel the wood soft beneath his fingers, swollen from years of wet winters. "Hold the flashlight steady, kiddo," he said. On the worn-out couch, Emma sat cross-legged in her pajamas, the flashlight almost too big for her hand. The beam trembled as she tried to point it at the spot over his head. "I'm trying," she said. "My arm's tired." "Your arm is 7. It can handle another 30 seconds. She huffed, but the light steadied. Ethan pressed another strip of tape over the small crack in the plastic sheeting he had stapled to the rafters. It crinkled under his hand. Water slid along the clear sheet, searching for a way through, then dropped into the pot again. Tap. "That should slow it down," he muttered. "You say that every time it rains," Emma said. He climbed down the stool, creaking under his weight, and exhaled when his feet hit the floor. His back protested. His hands smelled faintly of metal and old dust. He wiped them on his jeans and glanced at the digital clock on the TV stand. 6:42 a.m. Outside, the sky over Tacoma was a deep slate, the kind that never quite became daylight in winter. The window glass was streaked a thin veil of condensation gathering along the bottom. "Breakfast?" he said. "Chef's special." Emma hopped off the couch. Her socks slid on the wood floor, and she caught herself on the armrest. "Is it pancakes?" she asked. "What else do I know how to cook?" he said. "Eggs. Eggs don't count." He moved into the small kitchen. It was barely separated from the living room, just a change of flooring and a leaning half wall that had never been properly finished. A stack of bills sat near the microwave, half covered by Emma's drawing of a purple robot. He reached past the drawing for the box of mix and the cheap bottle of syrup. The box was lighter than he liked. He shook it, did a quick calculation that was more feeling than math, and decided it would stretch one more morning. Emma climbed onto the chair at the small table, the wood scarred with old knife marks and crayon stains. "Can I pour?" she asked. Boma asked. "When you are tall enough to see into the bowl without standing on the chair." "I am tall enough." "You are tall enough to reach everything on the top shelf. Not the same thing." She rolled her eyes. "You're not funny." He dropped a pat of butter into the pan. It hissed the sound, soft and comforting. The smell filled the tiny kitchen. For a moment it almost drowned out the damp plaster scent of the leaking ceiling. On the counter his phone buzzed, screen lighting up. The first notification was a weather alert. Winter storm warning, heavy rain, flooding in low-lying areas. He swiped it away without opening it. The second notification was from a number he recognized, Ruby, who owned the little diner on 12th Street. He hit call back and tucked the phone between his shoulder and his ear. "Morning," he said. "You're up early," Ruby's voice crackled through. "Good, my kitchen's trying to drown me." "Pipe again?" he asked. "Under the sink. It started last night. I thought it would stop. It got worse. You know anyone who can fix it?" He flipped the first pancake, the edges already turning light brown. "I might know a guy," he said. "I can swing by after I drop Emma at school." "Tonight would be better," she said. "The guy from the insurance company said take pictures while it's leaking. I need it fixed before the weekend rush. I'll make it worth your time, Ethan." "Cash?" he asked. "You know it." He looked toward the living room, the pot under the leak, the spot on the ceiling that would need more than tape someday. "Text me the time," he said. "I'll be there." He hung up, set the phone down screen first so he did not have to see any more notifications. He slid a pancake onto Emma's plate. It sagged slightly at the edges, but her eyes lit up anyway. "You always say we're rich when we have pancakes," she said through a mouthful. "That is because we are," he replied, taking the seat across from her with his own plate. "Look at this. Luxurious." "It is the cheap mix from the yellow box," she said. "You bought it on sale. Do not ruin the magic." She poked her fork into the middle of the pancake, watching the syrup pool. "You say we're rich when you're worried," she said quietly. He paused, fork halfway to his mouth. "Do I?" he asked. She nodded. "You said it when our power almost got turned off, and when your truck made that loud noise last month, and when Ms. Ramirez sent home the paper about the field trip money." He swallowed the pancake suddenly dry. "You keep track of everything, huh?" he said. "I'm 7, not a baby." He reached across the table and tapped her knuckles lightly. "Eat your magic pancakes," he said. "We've got a big day." She chewed thoughtfully. "Do I have to pretend I don't see you hiding the letters?" she asked. He glanced at the stack of envelopes on the counter. the red-stamped words "past due" peeking out from under the drawing. "It's part of the game," he said. "You pretend you don't see them. I pretend they're not there until after bedtime." She made a face. "That's a bad game." "It is the only one I know." On the TV in the living room, the morning news anchor's voice drifted in as the volume auto-played from where he had left it. A graphic of swirling clouds sat over the Puget Sound. "Heavy rain expected through the night," the anchor said. "Low-lying neighborhoods may experience flooding. Drivers should avoid back roads and exercise extreme caution." Emma looked over her shoulder at the screen. "Are we low-lying?" she asked. "We are medium-lying," he said. "We'll be fine." After breakfast, the morning moved in its usual narrow grooves. Emma brushed her teeth in front of the cloudy bathroom mirror, humming the jingle from a cereal commercial she had heard at Old Joe's place. Ethan searched for his one clean work shirt, found it drying angrily on the back of a chair, and decided it was dry enough. In the bedroom he shared not with anyone, but with the stack of cardboard boxes that never got unpacked, he dug through a drawer for his old Eid badge from the factory. The photo showed a younger man with less gray at his temples, wearing a collared shirt and an expression that still believed in things like job security. He shut the drawer on it. His real uniform waited on the chair by the door, faded jeans, heavy boots, jacket with worn elbows. He grabbed the metal toolbox that lived under the small entry table. It was nicked and paint-splattered handle smooth from years of use. Every job he took started with that weight in his hand. On the front porch, the air smelled of wet earth and cold. The world beyond the small yard was a blur of dark pines, chain-link fences, and power lines cutting the sky. Rain misted instead of poured fine enough to sneak under the brim of his cap. Old Joe sat on the porch of the next house, as he always did when the weather turned. He had a mug of coffee and a blanket over his knees, a wool cap pulled low. "You fixin' that roof again, Cole?" Joe called. "Trying to," Ethan said, locking the front door. Emma squeezed past him, backpack bouncing. "You should let it fall in," Joe said. "Maybe the city will feel sorry for you." "They barely feel sorry for the potholes." Emma waved. "Morning, Mr. Joe." "Morning, Peanut," he said. He nodded toward the sky. "Storm's angry this time. Roads will be slick by dark. Don't be a hero out there." Ethan checked his watch. "I've got a pipe to fix at Ruby's," he said. "If I don't go, her kitchen floods." "She got insurance." "Insurance doesn't lift a wrench." Joe snorted. "Suit yourself. Just remember, capes get caught in engines." Ethan smiled softly. "No cape, just tools." He opened the passenger door of the old pickup for Emma. The truck sat at the curb, paint faded to a tired blue one headlight, a little dimmer than the other. When the engine turned over, it did so with a wheeze before settling into a rough idle. Emma buckled her seatbelt with the solemn focus of a pilot. "Can we listen to the good station?" she asked. "The one that plays the same 3 songs forever." "Yes." He turned the dial until the familiar pop song filled the cabin. The wipers squeaked across the glass, pushing away the mist. As they pulled away from the curb, the pot under the leak inside the house kept catching water, drop after slow drop. The rain was only a mist by the time Ethan pulled up to the curb in front of the school. Children spilled out of cars, backpacks, bouncing breath fogging the air. The building looked tired but sturdy brick, darkened by years of wet seasons. "Remember your lunch?" he said, handing Emma the dented metal box with stickers peeling off the side. "I remember," she said. "Remember your tools." "I always remember my tools." She paused half out of the truck. "And remember not to worry about the letters until after bedtime," she added. He gave her a look. She smiled and hopped down to the sidewalk. "Love you, kiddo." "Love you, Dad." He watched until she disappeared through the double doors, swallowed up by a wave of jackets and bright sneakers. The wipers squeaked across the windshield again. Somewhere above the clouds, the sun was probably shining, but Tacoma only got the echo. He spent the day moving from job to job, a flickering light fixture in a rental kitchen, a garbage disposal that sounded like it had swallowed a fork, a thermostat that had given up somewhere in the night and left an older couple wrapped in 3 blankets on their couch. By late afternoon, his fingers were stiff, a fine layer of dust and grease under his nails. The truck smelled like coffee and old receipts. Emma climbed into the passenger seat at 3:15, cheeks pink from the cold ponytail lamp at the ends. "We did a volcano in science," she said as soon as her seatbelt clicked. "It exploded all over Jason's shoes." "He will remember that lesson," Ethan said. The clouds had thickened again. The rain came back heavier, tapping against the windshield with more confidence. The news on the radio talked about rising water near the river, about a car that had hydroplaned on the interstate that morning. Ethan turned it lower. They stopped at the small grocery store a few blocks from their street. The automatic doors opened slowly, as if half asleep. Inside, the air smelled like floor cleaner and overripe bananas. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. He walked the aisles with mental numbers running in the back of his mind. Bread, eggs, a bag of rice, a pack of frozen vegetables. Emma drifted toward the cereal aisles, landing on the bright boxes with cartoon characters. She picked one up and held it out like an offering. "Please." He checked the price tag, winced, and put it back. "We are here for things that can sit in a pot and pretend to be dinner," he said, "not sugar that floats." She trailed him to the checkout, dragging her feet just enough to show protest. The total on the register made his throat tighten, but he counted out the cash from his worn wallet and left the card where it was. Outside, the rain had turned to sheets. He hustled Emma into the truck, groceries in his arms, shoes splashing through shallow pools that reflected the streetlights. The world had that muffled sound it got when water wrapped everything at once. At home, he turned on the small television in the corner of the kitchen, so Emma would have noise while she drew at the table. A weather map filled the screen, colors swirling in over the area. The anchor stood in front of a graphic of raindrops and warning signs. "Heavy rainfall will continue into the night," the anchor said. "Some neighborhoods may see flooding on residential streets. Officials are advising drivers to stay off back roads after dark." "Are we a residential street?" Emma asked, drawing a robot with spiky hair. "We are absolutely a residential street," Ethan said, stirring a pot of rice and canned soup on the stove. "There is nothing more residential than this kitchen." His phone buzzed on the counter. He wiped his hand on a towel and picked it up. "Ruby again," he answered. "Hey," he said. "Hey yourself," Ruby said. There were plates clinking and a fryer hissing in the background. "I hate to say I told you so, but that pipe is officially trying to turn my kitchen into a swimming pool." "How bad?" he asked. "Bad enough the cook is wearing boots," she said. "I had to put towels everywhere. I close at 10. If you can come after that, I will pay you extra and throw in pie." He looked at the pot on the stove, at Emma at the table, at the leak that had started again over the living room. The pot below it was less empty now. "It is getting worse out there," he said. "I know," Ruby said. "If you cannot, I will figure something out." He rubbed his forehead. "I will drop Emma at Joe's," he said. "I will be there around 10:15. You are a St. Cole. Tell that to my transmission." They ate dinner, something thick and warm that steamed up the windows. He helped Emma with a math worksheet, watched her write numbers with the tip of her tongue poking out the corner of her mouth. By 9:30, he had her dressed in warm pajamas and a hoodie boots by the door. "Sleepover?" she asked as he zipped her jacket. "Just a late movie next door," he said. "I will pick you up when you are snoring." She pointed at his chest. "You have to promise to be careful. Mr. Joe said storms are mean." "Mr. Joe has been through more storms than either of us," Ethan said. "I will listen." They crossed the small strip of wet grass between their houses. Joe opened his door before they could knock the television glow behind him and the smell of popcorn drifting out. "I have got her," Joe said. "Go fix the world." "Just a diner?" Ethan said. He watched Emma settle onto Joe's sagging couch, clutching her stuffed animal eyes already catching on to the movie playing. He closed the door softly behind him. Out on the street, the rain felt colder. It hammered the roof of the truck, streaked the windshield in thick diagonal lines. The wipers worked hard, clearing just enough of a view ahead. The diner was across town, closer to the industrial area, where the buildings sat lower, closer to the ground, closer to the water, that liked to gather where it should not. The roads glistened, every street lamp doubled in the slick surface, the city turning into a blurred watercolor of light and dark. Inside the cab, the radio was nothing but static and soft music. He leaned forward slightly, fingers loose but ready on the wheel, shoulders tight. Tires hissed through standing water. He took the usual route, then hesitated at an intersection where water was already pooling around a storm drain. The main road ahead looked choked with headlights. He turned onto a side street. He knew a less traveled cut-through that wound past a small stand of trees and an empty lot. It was darker here, the street lamps farther apart. The truck's headlights carved a narrow tunnel in the falling rain. Branches shook and shivered in the wind. Leaves plastered themselves to the asphalt like fallen hands. The truck's engine sounded too loud in the quiet. Halfway down the block, his eyes caught something wrong. Two beams of light at an angle they should never be fixed on the lowest branches of a tall fir, a shape where no car should be. He eased off the gas, heart thudding. As he rolled closer, the shape came into focus. A sedan, the kind that cost more than his house, pinned nose first against the tree. The hood crumpled, windshield starred with cracks. Steam or smoke, it was hard to tell which curled up from somewhere near the engine. "Come on," he whispered. He pulled the truck to the side, tires splashing, and threw it into park. The rain slammed into him the moment he opened the door. It soaked through his jacket, and a breath ran down his neck, turned his hair into wet strings. He ran. The closer he got, the more details sharpened. Airbags had exploded inside the sedan, white fabric deflated and limp now. The driver's side door was jammed up against the trunk of the tree. The front bumper hung at an angle. One headlight smashed the other, still shining, cutting through the rain in a blind stare. He reached the passenger side and tried the handle. It did not budge. He cupped his hands around his eyes and peered through the glass. A figure in the driver's seat slumped against the deployed airbag, face turned slightly toward him. "Hey!" he shouted over the rain. "Can you hear me?" No response. He pounded on the window, then moved back, scanning the ground. There was a piece of broken concrete near the ditch, half buried in mud. He grabbed it, ignoring the sting of gravel against his skin, and swung it at the lower corner of the window. The glass shuddered. He hit it again and again. On the third hit, the glass cracked like ice on a pond, then spiderwebbed and gave way in a rain of sharp pieces. They clattered across the inside of the door and onto the seat. The smell hit him next. Hot metal, spilled fuel, and something acrid from the engine compartment. Underneath it, a faint chemical hint of airbag dust. He cleared the jagged edge of the window with his sleeve and reached in. The driver was a woman, dark hair now matted with rain, and a thin line of blood at her hairline. She wore a blouse and a blazer, a bracelet of smooth silver on one wrist. Her eyes were closed, but her chest rose and fell fast, shallow. Her seatbelt was cutting across her ribs, holding her upright. "I have got you," Ethan said, though he did not know if she could hear. "Stay with me." He fumbled for the buckle. His fingers slipped once, twice, then caught it and pressed. It did not release. He sucked in a breath and yanked. The belt dug into his palm. In the distance there was a low hiss from the front of the car, a sound that made something primal inside him tense. He risked a glance. A small flicker of orange glowed under the crumpled hood. "No," he said to no one. He grabbed the multi-tool from his pocket, flipped out the small serrated blade with a flick he had done 1,000 times on pipes and cables. He sawed at the belt where it crossed her abdomen. The fibers resisted, then began to give. The hiss grew louder. The flicker brightened. The belt snapped. The woman sagged toward him. He hooked his arms under her shoulders and pulled. Her weight was awkward, heavy in the cramped space. Her head lolled against his shoulder, breath hot and uneven on his neck. Step by step, he dragged her through the shattered window, turning his body sideways to clear the frame. Glass bit at his jacket, at his arms. Rain washed some of it away as they cleared the door. He half carried, half hauled her back toward the truck. Behind him, the orange under the hood bloomed into something more, a tongue of flame licking up through the gap. By the time he laid her gently across the bench seat of his truck, the sedan at the tree had a real fire growing inside it. Heat pressed against his back, even through the rain. He slammed his door shut and fumbled the keys into the ignition. The engine caught with a protesting rumble. His phone sat in the cup holder. He grabbed it, wet fingers slipping on the screen. No signal bars. The storm had rolled over this part of town hard. He looked at the woman beside him, her lashes clumped with water, lips pale, her chest stuttered with each breath. The hospital was miles away on the other side of town, past low areas already filling with water. The roads were getting worse with every minute. His house with the leaking roof and the dented pot waited 10 minutes in the other direction. He sat there for a beat, fingers tight on the steering wheel, listening to her ragged breath and the rain hammering the roof. The hospital sat somewhere beyond a maze of low streets and bad drainage. His house sat on a slight rise, close enough that he could picture the crooked porch light and the pot under the leak. He turned the wheel toward home. The truck lurched back onto the road, tires slicing through water that had no business being that deep. The wipers scraped at full speed. Headlights caught the lines of the pavement just long enough for him to stay between them. Every few seconds he glanced at the woman slumped against the seat. Her head rested awkwardly against the glass hair plastered to her cheek. Up close, she looked older than he had first thought, not from age but from the set of her mouth, the faint groove between her brows that did not relax even in unconsciousness. The silver bracelet on her wrist glinted each time the truck bounced over a pothole. "Hey," he said, voice low. "Oh, stay with me, all right?" Her eyelids fluttered once, not quite opening. A small sound escaped her, more breath than word. "Cold," she murmured. "I know," he said. "We are fixing that." He cranked the heater, though it always took its time to think about working. Warm air eventually sputtered out of vents that smelled faintly of dust and old coffee. It blew across her face in uneven bursts. The 10 minutes to his house felt longer than any drive he had taken. Twice he slowed to crawl through the water that had pooled knee-deep on either side of the street. Once a branch lay across part of the lane slick with rain. He bumped over it, jaw clenched. When he finally saw his block relief hit him so fast his hands shook. The porch light he had left on when he went to Ruby's diner glowed a dull yellow through the rain. Next door, old Joe's living room window was a square of moving color, a movie still playing. He pulled up close to the curb, killed the engine, and sat for a moment listening. The woman was still breathing, still shallow but steady. "We are here," he said, mostly to keep himself moving. Getting her out of the truck took more care than getting her into it. He slid his arms under her again, one behind her shoulders, one under her knees. She was light for an adult, but dead weight had a stubbornness all its own. His back protested as he lifted. The rain met them again, colder than before. It soaked his hair, his collar slid down his spine. He hooked the crook of his elbow around the door to shut it behind him and made his way up the small path to the porch. The key stuck in the lock just long enough to make his heart skip. Then it turned, and the door opened into the familiar dim of his living room. He carried her past the sagging couch, past Emma's scattered drawings, and the pot under the leak, and pushed open the door to his bedroom with his foot. The room smelled like laundry that never quite dried, and the faint trace of the cheap cologne he had worn once to a parent-teacher conference. He set her down on his bed as gently as he could. The mattress dipped under her weight. Her wet clothes clung to her skin dark against the worn sheet. Her lips had a bluish tinge he did not like. "You are all right," he said more firmly now, as if tone alone could make it true. He peeled off her blazer first, the fabric heavy with water. Underneath was a blouse that had probably cost more than his entire work wardrobe. It was soaked through. He hesitated, heat rising under his skin even in the cold air. "Okay," he muttered to himself. "Not weird, not weird, not weird. Prevent hypothermia." He checked her pockets, quickly found a sleek phone, a small wallet, a car fob all heavier with water. He set them on the nightstand, then grabbed the spare blanket from the chair by the window. The old heater in the corner rattled awake when he turned the dial. It would take time to push any actual warmth into the room. He moved quickly, fingers clumsy with cold, unbuttoning her blouse, enough to pull it away without jostling her too much. He kept his eyes on the practical parts of the task, the soaked fabric, the goosebumps on her arms, the way her shoulders shivered even in sleep. He left her in a dry undershirt that covered what needed covering, and wrapped the blanket around her, tucking it in tight along her sides like he did for Emma when she had nightmares. He pulled his extra pillow from the top of the dresser and eased it under her head. For a moment, he just stood there listening. Her breathing had deepened, less frantic but still faster than normal. Her skin was still cool to the touch when he brushed the back of his fingers against her forehead. He straightened and backed out of the room, pulling the door until it was almost shut, leaving a hand-wide gap. In the living room, the dripping from the ceiling sounded louder, a steady metronome counting out the seconds. The pot below it was half full now, water rippling each time another drop hit. He grabbed his phone and tried again for a signal. One bar flickered at the top of the screen, then dropped. He moved closer to the front window, held the phone up, tried a different corner of the room. Finally, a weak bar stayed. He punched in the emergency number, listened to a tone ring, then a recorded voice warning of high call volume due to weather conditions. A strained-sounding operator eventually came on. He gave his address to... His address explained about the crash, the woman in his bed. "They are sending units to major incidents first," the operator said. "If she is stable and breathing, keep her warm, keep monitoring. If anything changes and you can get her to a hospital safely, do that." He hung up with a hollow feeling in his chest. The storm had filled the city with emergencies. One unknown woman breathing on her own did not sit at the top of the list. There was one more thing he had to do. He wiped water from his face, grabbed his keys again, and stepped back into the rain. It was a shorter walk this time, just across the strip of lawn and up old Joe's steps. Joe opened the door before he could knock, as if he had been watching through the peephole. "You look like you lost a fight with a fire hose," Joe said. "You could say the fire hose won," Ethan said. Joe peered over his shoulder toward Ethan's house. "Everything all right?" he asked. Ethan hesitated, then nodded once. "Yeah," he said. "Diner job took longer. Weather is bad. You mind if Emma stays until morning?" Joe glanced back at his living room. Emma was curled on the couch under a blanket, eyes glazed with sleep as a cartoon flickered on the screen. "She is out," Joe said. "I will have her back by breakfast." "I will pick her up at first light," Ethan said. "Thanks." "You are leaking something red," Joe said, nodding toward Ethan's hand. Ethan looked down. A thin line of blood traced his knuckles where the glass had caught him. The rain had smeared it into pale pink. "Just a scratch," he said. "I have had worse from faulty dishwashers." Joe studied him for a second longer. "You need anything, you knock," he said. Ethan nodded and turned back toward his own porch. Inside, the house felt different with another person in it, even though she made no sound. The hallway to his bedroom seemed shorter. The air seemed thicker. He cleaned his hands at the kitchen sink with water that was too cold and soap that smelled faintly of citrus. The cut on his knuckles stung when he dabbed it dry and wrapped it with the last bandage from the box in the cabinet. He peeked into the bedroom once more. The woman had not moved much, but her face looked less pinched. Her hair had dried in uneven waves against the pillowcase. The bracelet on her wrist caught the weak light from the hallway like a small, stubborn star. He whispered without thinking, "You picked a bad night to take that road." He left the door ajar again and went to the couch. His body sagged when he lowered himself onto the cushions. The TV flickered with the glow of late-night programming muted. Rain rapped against the windows, a constant low percussion. He lay on his side facing the bedroom door, listening hard for any change in her breathing, any sound at all. The pot under the leak kept its rhythm. Tap, tap. His eyes burned. Every time he blinked, he saw the flash of orange under the sedan's crumpled hood. He fought sleep until his body stopped caring what he wanted. Somewhere in the blue edge between waking and drifting, a hand touched his shoulder. Small fingers, familiar weight. "Dad," Emma whispered, "why is there a lady in your room?" Morning arrived as a dull gray instead of light. Ethan woke to the ache in his neck and the scratch of rough fabric against his cheek. For a second, he could not remember why he was on the couch instead of in his bed. Then the memories rushed back in quick flashes. Rain, broken glass, a bracelet shining in the dark, fire behind him while he ran. Something tugged at his shoulder. "Dad," a small voice whispered by his ear, "why is there a lady in your room?" He opened his eyes. Emma stood by the couch, knees pressed together under her oversized hoodie hair, a mess from sleep. Her stuffed animal hung from one hand, its ear dragging along the floor. Ethan pushed himself up slowly. The room smelled like damp drywall and last night's soup. Light seeped through the thin curtains, the kind of light that did not bother to be bright. "Morning," he said, voice rough. "Mr. Joe brought me home," she said. "He said you were sleeping like a rock." Ethan glanced at the window. The curtains were parted just enough to see Joe's porch across the small yard. Joe's door was closed now. A faint trail of footprints mixed with rain prints marked the space between the houses. "What time is it?" he asked. Emma checked the digital clock under the television as if it might lie. 7:12, she said. "I had cereal at Mr. Joe's. He said you were probably tired from fighting dragons or something." Ethan scrubbed his face with his hands. "He is very dramatic for someone who gets winded going upstairs," he said. Emma shifted her weight. "There is a lady in your bed," she repeated. "She looked at me." He blinked. "She is awake?" he asked. "I think so," Emma said. Her eyes were open. She did not say anything. She just stared at the ceiling. A small knot tightened in his chest. He stood, the couch springs creaking in relief. "You stay here," he said. "I will go talk to her." Emma nodded, but came closer as if a few steps might somehow be allowed. He walked down the short hall. The door to his bedroom was still slightly open. He pushed it with his fingertips. The woman was not staring at the ceiling anymore. She was turned on her side, propped on one elbow, blanket pulled up under her arms. Her hair was a dark tangle around her face. Her eyes were open sharp despite the bruised shadows beneath them. She looked smaller in the light than she had in his arms last night, but something in her gaze made the room feel narrower. They regarded each other for a heartbeat. "Hi," Ethan said, his voice softer than it had been in the truck. "You are awake." "Apparently," she replied. Her voice was low, rough at the edges, but steady. She glanced around the room, taking in the cracked plaster, the second-hand dresser, the small heater in the corner. Her feet were bare pale against his faded comforter. "Where am I?" she asked. "Dukt, my house," he said. "Tacoma. We were closer to here than to the hospital. Roads were flooded. You were freezing." She processed that. Her gaze moved to her clothes, now draped over the back of his chair, wrinkled and damp. "You undressed me," she said. "It was not an accusation exactly, just a statement. Only enough to keep you from turning into a popsicle," he said. His ears felt hot. "Your clothes were soaked. I left your undershirt on. Blanket did most of the work." Her mouth twitched, not quite into a smile. "That was probably the right call," she said. Her fingers touched the blanket, then the pillow beneath her head. "You gave me your bed." "I like the couch," he lied. "It keeps my back humble." Her eyes flicked to the doorway. "And the girl?" she asked. "She said you are her dad." "Emma," he said. "She is 7. She thinks cereal is a food group." "She looked worried," the woman said. "She notices everything," he replied. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The heater gave a half-hearted clank. Somewhere in the wall, a pipe rattled. "I should get you to a hospital," he said. "You hit your head. Your car hit a tree." At the word car, something in her face shuddered briefly. A flash of pain crossed her eyes, not physical, then disappeared. "No hospital," she said. "I will have my doctor come to me." "Your doctor," he repeated. "Personal physician," she said. "It is less dramatic than it sounds." He did not know anyone who had a personal physician. He also did not know how to argue with the confidence in her tone. "Can you sit up?" he asked. "I can try." She pushed the blanket aside and swung her legs over the edge of the bed. Her movements were careful but not weak. A bruise was blooming along one shin, the skin discoloring in uneven shades. She winced when her bare feet touched the cold floor. The blanket slipped down. She caught it with one hand and held it in place. "Bathroom?" she asked. "Seed." He gestured toward the hall. "Second door on the left," he said. "Water takes a minute to decide its direction." "That sounds promising," she murmured. She stood with more grace than he expected from someone who had been unconscious in a wreck less than 12 hours before. She steadied herself on the wall, once then made it out into the hall. Emma was in the living room pretending not to watch. She sat on the edge of the couch, arms wrapped around her stuffed animal, eyes huge. "Hi," the woman said. Emma blinked. "Hi," she said back. "Did you crash from space?" The woman's mouth actually curved this time. "Just from the road," she said. "I hear it was ugly." "It was loud," Emma said. "My dad smelled like smoke when he came in." The woman looked at Ethan. "You went back to check the car," she said. "It is gone by now," he said. She nodded once, then continued down the hall. Ethan watched until the bathroom door closed. He let out a breath he had not realized he had been holding. "She is not from space," he told Emma. "She looks like she is from TV," Emma whispered. "TV people still use bathrooms," he said, "and they need coffee." He moved to the kitchen. His body felt heavier, as if someone had quietly tied weights to his limbs while he slept. He pulled the coffee tin from the cabinet and scooped grounds into the old machine. It gurgled to life, coughing steam. The sound of the shower started water pounding against old tiles. It was strange hearing it when he was not the one under it. The house had never held another adult overnight. The extra toothbrush in the cabinet was there by accident from a free sample box. Emma climbed onto a chair at the small table elbows on the wood. "Is she going to stay?" she asked. "For coffee," he said. "Maybe a phone call. Then she will go home." "Where is home?" Emma asked. He opened his mouth, closed it. He had no idea yet. "Somewhere that is not here," he said finally. "Do not worry about it." "You always say do not worry about it when you are worrying about it," she said. He poured coffee into the chipped mug he always used, and another into a mismatched mug for a guest he never thought he would have. He was setting them on the counter when the bathroom door opened. He turned. She stood barefoot in the hallway, his white dress shirt on sleeves rolled up to her elbows. It fell to mid-thigh on her, the fabric hanging differently on her frame, but he recognized it instantly. She had buttoned it wrong by the collar sitting a little crooked. Her dark hair was towel-dried loose around her shoulders. For a second his brain stopped on a loop of, "You are wearing my shirt? You are wearing my shirt." She followed his earlier gaze to the coffee. "Is that for me?" she asked. "Yeah," he said. "I have sugar, but it is the cheap kind." "The cheap kind works the same," she said. She walked into the kitchen like she had always known the path, bare feet making soft sounds on the worn linoleum. Emma watched openly now. "You look different," she told the woman. "I feel different," the woman said. "Dry, which is an improvement." She took the mug from Ethan, her fingers brushing his. Her skin was warmer now. Her eyes met his over the rim for half a second. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You are welcome," he replied. Emma leaned her cheek on her fists. "What is your name?" she asked. The woman looked at her, considering. "Vivian," she said finally. "Vivian Hart." Emma tried it on her tongue. "Vivian," she repeated. "I am Emma. That is my dad. He fixes everything." "So I gathered," Vivian said softly. Ethan cleared his throat. "I can call you a cab," he said a little more briskly than he intended. "Or a ride. The roads are still ugly, but they are clearing. Do you have someone you can call?" She looked at him over the rim of the mug. "My driver has been in the area since dawn," she said. "He is waiting in the car down the street." "The whole night?" Ethan asked. "I told him to go home," she said. "He did not listen." "Sounds like someone else I know," Emma muttered. Ethan shot her a look. You have had someone sitting out there in this storm for hours, he said. It is his job, Vivian said. You could have left, he added, unable to keep the surprise from his voice. She shrugged one shoulder. I did not want to disappear without saying thank you properly, she said. He had no answer for that. The kitchen suddenly felt too small for all the things unsaid between them. The drip in the living room punctuated the silence. Vivian set her mug down gently. There is also the matter of the damages, she said. He frowned. What damages? He asked. My clothes, she said, glancing at the chair where her blouse and blazer hung. Your bed, the shirt. The shirt survived worse in college, he said. She reached over to the nightstand where he had piled her things and picked up the small wallet. It was smooth leather, probably cost as much as his monthly gas. She opened it, thumb flicking through bills with the soft, practiced motion of someone who did not count small amounts often. She pulled out a thick stack of cash and laid it on the table between them. Crisp bills, edges perfectly aligned. This is for last night, she said. For the room, the clothes, the truck upholstery, the bandage on your hand. Emma's eyes widened. Ethan did not look down. I did not do it for money, he said. I know, Vivian replied. That is exactly why I am offering it, because you did not ask. He stared at the stack. It sat there like a bright, quiet accusation. Numbers flashed against his eyelids. The red past due stamps, the rent notice, the field trip form he still had not signed. He reached out, picked up the money. Vivian watched him, her face unreadable. He shoved the stack back toward her. No, he said. Something flickered in her expression. Mild confusion quickly masked. You reject it, she said. That is what no means, he replied. I am not taking your money. It is just compensation, she said. You provided a service. I dragged you out of a burning car, he said. And you brought me here, used your things, gave up your bed, she replied. You are out time and resources. I am out a night's sleep, he said. That is it. Emma slid off the chair and took a step back, sensing the shift in the room. Vivian studied him the way someone studies a lock that will not open the usual way. Most people would take it, she said. I am not most people, he replied. Her fingers rested on the edge of the cash. What is it you think I am doing? She asked. Buying you off, erasing a debt. He met her eyes. They were very clear, very bright, like polished stone. I think you are used to paying to make discomfort go away, he said. That is your choice. This one is mine. Silence stretched between them, taut as a wire. The drip from the ceiling in the other room kept going. Tap. Vivian lifted the stack again. For a second he thought she might insist. Instead, she folded the bills back into her wallet with a small, controlled motion. I misread the situation, she said. I thought this would help. It does not, he said. She closed the wallet, the click of the clasp sounding louder than it should. I am sorry, she said, for that. He believed her. Not because her voice shook, it did not, but because something behind her eyes had shifted a small recalibration. It is fine, he said, though it clearly was not for either of them. She set the empty mug in the sink, rinsed it quickly, because apparently even people who arrived in sedans worth more than his street believed in not leaving dirty dishes behind. Thank you for the bed, she said, and the blanket, and the shirt. Keep it, he said. She arched a brow. The shirt, he added. I mean, keep the shirt. The bed stays. A brief ghost of amusement crossed her face. I will have it cleaned and returned, she said. It looks better on you anyway, he said before he could stop himself. Her gaze caught his for a beat longer this time, something unspoken passing between them. She turned toward the door. Emma stepped aside, clutching her stuffed animal, watching like she was afraid if she blinked, the woman might vanish entirely. Vivian paused with her hand on the knob. Your name, she said. You never told me. Ethan, he said. Ethan Cole. She repeated it quietly, as if testing how it felt. Ethan Cole, she said. I will not forget it. Then she opened the door. Cold, damp air rolled into the kitchen. Outside, a black sedan waited at the curb, its engine already humming. A man in a dark coat stepped out just enough to pull the rear door open for her. Vivian walked out barefoot onto the porch, then down the steps, the cuffs of Ethan's shirt brushing her thighs. She did not look back as she slid into the car. The door shut. The sedan pulled away, taillights glowing red for a short stretch before they turned the corner and disappeared into the gray. Ethan stood for a moment in the doorway, hand on the frame, listening to the silence she had left behind. Emma came up beside him. She did look like she was from TV, she said softly. He closed the door, the latch clicking into place. Yeah, he said, something like that. Later that afternoon, while Emma colored at the kitchen table and a pot simmered on the stove, the television in the corner flicked from a cartoon to a breaking news banner. The sound rose just enough to catch Ethan's ear. He glanced over without much interest, wiping his hands on a towel. On the screen under bright studio lights sat a woman in a tailored suit, hair smoothed back, makeup perfect. Behind her the words Heartline Systems scrolled across a glass wall. A photo appeared in the corner of the screen. Twisted metal among trees, emergency lights flashing. Last night, tech executive Vivian Hart was involved in a serious car accident on a rain-soaked road outside Tacoma, the anchor said. Sources say a local resident pulled her from the vehicle before it caught fire. Ms. Hart declined to name her rescuer, but had this to say. The clip cut to Vivian on the steps of a glass building, microphones thrust toward her. She looked different in daylight, but her eyes were the same. He was kind, she said, calm, and he refused payment. That kind of integrity is rare. I am grateful. Ethan froze dish towel dripping onto the floor. Emma looked up at the screen, then at him. That is her, she said, the bathroom lady. Yeah, he said quietly. It is? The news clip ended and the anchor moved on to something about international markets, but the living room seemed to hold the echo of Vivian's voice. Emma slid off her chair and walked up to the screen until her nose was almost touching it. She is really from TV, she said, and she said thank you. Ethan set the towel on the counter. His palms felt damp, although they were dry. Looks that way, he said. She did not say your name, Emma added. Good, he said. I like my name where it is. She turned around, frowning. Where is it? On my mail, he said. On my truck, in your school file. That is enough places for one name. Emma squinted at him, then pointed at the television again. But you are the guy, she said. You pulled her out. You put her in your bed. You made her coffee. That is a lot. It was raining, he said. She was there. I was there. That is all. She considered this, then held up her drawing, the one with the purple robot. I am going to add her, she announced. She needs a picture. That night, after Emma was in bed and the house had gone quiet, except for the drip from the ceiling and the distant sound of tires on wet pavement, Ethan sat at the small kitchen table with a stack of envelopes in front of him. He did not open them. He just looked at his name printed on each one and thought about the stack of cash she had laid on that same table, neat and anonymous. He had not wanted it then. He still did not want it now. Wanting it and needing it were different things, and he tried not to think too hard about the second part. He rubbed his thumb along the edge of one envelope until it bent. On the fridge, Emma's updated drawing had a new figure, a woman in a long shirt hair like black rain standing between a truck and a crooked little house. Above her, Emma had written in careful, shaky letters, Space Lady. 3 days passed. The storm cleared, but left everything slick. Puddles lingered in the deeper cracks of the street. The air held that raw, scrubbed smell it only had after a serious soaking. Ethan went back to his rhythm. Pipes, wires, broken things that needed hands to put them right. He replaced a cracked outlet in a bathroom that smelled like cheap perfume. He crawled under a trailer to patch a leak while a dog barked at his feet. At home, he showed up for the nightly war with homework and the ceiling leak. He did not tape the plaster again. He just emptied the pot when it got full and moved it half an inch to catch the drop when the path of the water shifted. Once at Old Joe's, the news mentioned Heartline Systems again. Some story about a new product release and rising stock prices. Vivian's face flashed briefly on the screen in the corner of the bar. Joe looked from the television to Ethan. That the woman from the road, he asked. Yeah, Ethan said. She looks different with makeup, Joe said. Everyone does, Ethan replied. You talked to her since she left here in your clothes, Joe asked. No, Ethan said. Huh. Joe took a sip of his beer. You think she is done with you? He added. Ethan shrugged. People like that do not usually come back to streets like this, he said. He said it lightly, but something in his chest gave a small, reluctant twist. On the third day, the rain came back in thin, steady lines. Not a storm, just a reminder. The sky hung low, the world washed in gray. Ethan spent the morning fixing a squeaky door at the elementary school. The principal had finally found room in the budget for small repairs, which meant Ethan could bill a few honest hours instead of chasing workhouse by house. He was in the teacher's lounge half under a sink with a wrench in his hand when the sound of an engine drifting in from the street changed the air in the room. Not louder, just different. A smooth, expensive purr instead of the usual rattles and coughs. Ms. Ramirez stood by the window with a mug of coffee watching the drizzle on the playground. Her eyes narrowed. That is not a parent car, she said. Ethan tightened a joint until the drip at the back of the cabinet finally stopped. There is a type now, he asked. There is always a type, she said. You hear the difference once you have stood on enough curbs. He slid out from under the sink, handed her a towel. "Try the faucet," he said. She turned it on. Water ran, then stopped cleanly when she closed the handle. No more dripping. "Magic," she said. "Just physics and old pipes," he replied. She kept looking out the window, head tilted. "Huh?" she said. "Huh, what?" he asked. "Come see," she said. He wiped his hands on a rag and stepped over to the narrow glass. The playground stretched out below, a smear of wet swings and empty monkey bars. Beyond the chain-link fence, the line of cars at pickup time was still thin. It was early yet. At the curb, a black sedan idled. It was the sort of car that did not usually have mud on it. A man in a dark coat sat behind the wheel, posture straight as if the seat might scold him if he slouched. The rear door opened. Vivian stepped out. She wore a white coat that fell almost to her knees, dark pants, tall heels that clicked on the wet pavement. An umbrella stayed closed in her hand as if she did not trust the sky enough to bother opening it. Her hair was smooth, the bruise on her forehead mostly faded, just a shadow now. Even from this distance, she did not look like she could belong to any of the small houses around the school. She looked like she had forgotten the word small. "You know her?" Ms. Ramirez asked. "Something like that," Ethan said. He felt suddenly aware of the grease on his cuffs, the damp at the knees of his jeans. Vivian started walking toward the front doors. Teachers crossing the hallway glanced out, then did double takes. A few of the older kids near the office window pressed their faces to the glass. "You better go see what that is about," Ms. Ramirez said, "before the principal tries to hire her." Ethan tossed the rag in his toolbox and snapped the metal latch closed. "I was kind of hoping she had forgotten my address," he said. "People like that do not show up twice by mistake," Ms. Ramirez replied. He took the stairs down 2 at a time. The echo of his boots bounced off the cinder block walls. In the front office, the secretary had already straightened a stack of papers that did not need straightening, eyes flicking from her computer to the glass doors. Vivian stepped inside as the doors opened for a mother wrestling a stroller. The mother stopped short, staring for a second, as if she had walked into a commercial. The secretary found her voice first. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I am here to see Ethan Cole," Vivian said. Her gaze found him almost immediately, as if she had known exactly where he would be standing. Ethan wiped his palms on his jeans. "You found me?" he said. "Your address was not complicated," she replied. Her eyes traveled briefly to the toolbox at his feet, then back up. "We should talk." He almost said no. The word sat on his tongue. It died there. "Not in here," the secretary said quickly, eyes wide. "Students." Vivian nodded as if that made sense to her. Summer to her. "There is a covered area by the playground," Ethan said. "We can stand there." He picked up his toolbox and led the way down the hall. He could feel eyes on his back. Behind him, the click of her heels was a steady rhythm. Outside, the air was cool and wet. The covered walkway by the playground was just high enough to keep most of the rain out. The concrete beneath it was etched with chalk drawings that had blurred in the damp. Vivian stopped there, folding her arms loosely. "You look better," Ethan said. "I feel better," she said. "Thanks to you." "You are welcome," he said. "How is the car?" She gave a short, humorless laugh. "Unsalvageable," she said, "which is why insurance exists." They stood in a small pocket of silence, while playground equipment gleamed with water around them. "Why are you here?" he asked finally. She did not answer immediately. Instead, she reached into her bag and withdrew a thick envelope, the kind used for official documents. A logo he recognized sat in the corner, the name of the company that managed his rental. He felt his shoulders tense. "I wanted to bring this in person," she said. He took the envelope, more wary than curious. The paper was heavy, unforgiving. He slid a finger under the flap and broke the seal. Inside, there were several pages. His name appeared near the top, printed in a careful, impersonal font. The words below it rearranged themselves into meaning as he read. He looked up. "What is this?" he asked. "A deed," she said. "To your house." He blinked. "My house," he repeated. "I bought the building from your landlord yesterday," she said. "All the units. This morning I signed over your unit to you, free and clear." The pages in his hand suddenly felt heavier. The drizzle at the edge of the covered walkway seemed louder. "I do not understand," he said. "You live in that house," she said. "You have for a while. You pay on time when you can. Even when you cannot, you still fix things for other people. You pulled me out of a wreck and refused to take money for it." She met his eyes. "You should not have to wonder if someone can take your roof away because the wrong bill went unpaid," she said. He could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. "You think kindness is a debt," he said slowly, "that you can pay off." "This is not payment," she said. "It is redirection." "Redirection," he repeated. "That is a new word for buying someone off. If I wanted to buy you off, she said, her voice quiet. I would have gone with a larger check and less paperwork. Children's voices drifted faintly from inside the building. Somewhere a bell rang. He looked at the sheet again at the place where his name sat in bold above words like owner and parcel number. He had never owned anything more expensive than his truck. I did not ask you for this, he said. I know, she said. I do not want you dropping houses on me like you are some kind of reverse landlord, he added. The corner of her mouth twitched. You think this is about balancing a ledger, she said. It is not. Then what is it about, he asked. She drew in a breath, let it out slowly, a visible effort. When I was a kid, she said, the only constant thing I had was a trash bag with my clothes in it. Different foster homes, different couches, different rules, same bag. I learned not to expect walls to stay mine for long. He had not expected that. The idea sat next to the image he already had of her in glass offices with polished floors and expensive coffee. I built a life where no one could move me again, she continued. I worked. I clawed my way up. I bought buildings I would never live in. Somewhere along the way, I forgot what it feels like to not be able to sleep because you do not know where you will be next month. She nodded toward the papers in his hand. This is not charity, she said. It is course correction, for me. He swallowed. You could have given that house to any of the tenants, he said. Why me? Because I know you would turn around and hold the door for the others, she said. You already do with duct tape and late nights. He had not told her about the extra weekends he spent fixing things in other units for free. Someone had, or she had noticed in ways he did not understand. This still feels wrong, he said, like you were trying to fix the universe with a pen. I am not that arrogant, she said. I know I cannot fix the universe. I can fix one line on one guy's balance sheet. She hesitated. That is not the only reason I am here, she added. Of course it is not, he said dry. A faint smile tugged at her lips. I am starting something, she said. Something that needs your kind of stubborn. He waited. I am setting up a fund through my company, she said. 4 single parents, housing assistance, job training, child care, the people who get left behind when everyone else talks about opportunity. He thought of the parents he had seen in units like his in waiting rooms, in break rooms, the ones who always seemed to be juggling 3 things at once and dropping one anyway. And you want what from me? He asked. I named it after you, she said. Cole Fund, working title. His grip on the envelope tightened. You used my name, he said. I did, she said, without asking. That was presumptuous. Consider this conversation my attempt to fix that. He shook his head once. You should pick a different name, he said. Someone who is not just a guy with a leaky roof and a rusty truck. You are precisely the guy I want, she said, because you are the one who did the right thing when no one was watching, because you know this neighborhood better than my board ever will, because you know what help actually looks like and what it does not. The rain at the edge of the awning had thickened streams now instead of drops. You want me to sit in meetings with your executives, he said. Smile for cameras. I want you to tell me when my executives are wrong, she said. I want you to tell me when my ideas are useless. Cameras are optional. He studied her. She was standing close enough now that he could see the fine lines at the corners of her eyes, the way fatigue sat in her shoulders beneath the expensive coat. This is a lot, he said quietly. I know, she said. You do not have to give me an answer now. I have to pick up my daughter in 10 minutes, he said, and fix a broken towel rack in the nurse's office. That sounds more urgent than my offer, she said. That is not what I said, he replied. For the first time since she had stepped from the car, her expression softened in a way that had nothing to do with strategy or negotiation. I am not trying to buy you, she said. I am trying to build something that does not feel hollow. You are the only person I trust right now to tell me if I am failing. He looked down at the deed again at his name printed in ink that would not wash off in the rain. I need to think, he said. Good, she said. Think, yell, write angry notes on napkins, whatever helps. She took a small card from her bag and held it out. It was simple, just her name and a number. When you decide anything, she said, call me. He took it, tucking it into the envelope with the deed. She turned as if to go, then paused. Is Emma happy here? She asked. At the school, he said. Yeah, they care, they try. Her gaze flicked toward the building. Then we will make sure she can keep walking into it without worrying about where she sleeps at night, she said. She walked back toward the front doors, coat bright against the gray. Teachers at the office window pretended not to stare. Ethan stayed under the covered walkway, the envelope in his hands growing damp around the edges. The weight of it was different now. Not heavier, not lighter, just changed. Behind him, the bell rang again, and the sound of children's footsteps rose, filling the hallways with a familiar rushing noise. The deed rode home on the passenger seat, buckled in like a fragile passenger. The envelope edges curled slightly, where the drizzle had kissed them. Ethan drove slower than usual, mind stuck in the space between each wiper stroke. His toolbox thumped quietly against the floorboard with each turn. When he pulled into his street, everything looked the same. The sagging porch, old Joe's crooked fence, the patch of stubborn moss by the mailbox. Everything was the same, and something was not. Emma barreled out of the school doors an hour later, hair frizzed from the damp backpack half unzipped. "Ms. Ramirez said we might get a rainbow tomorrow," she said, climbing into the truck. "She said sometimes you get one after a storm. Did you fix the towel rack?" "I did," he said. He could feel the envelope practically glowing beside him, but he waited until they were home, shoes off, jacket hung on the same bent nail by the door before he pulled it out. He set it on the kitchen table and sat down. Emma did the same, mirroring him without thinking. She eyed the envelope like it might contain a magic trick. "What is that?" she asked. "Paperwork," he said. "You say that when it is bad," she said. "This is not bad," he replied. "Just big." He slid the pages out and laid them flat. His name stared back at him, printed in black. Owner, legal description, a small rectangle on a map that was apparently now his. Emma leaned closer. "Is that our house?" she asked. "In a very boring way, yes," he said. "But it was already our house," she said. "We sleep here." "We did not own it," he said. "We rented it. That meant someone else could decide things. Now it is officially ours, on paper." She traced the outline of the tiny map with her finger. "So no one can make us leave?" she asked. "Not without a very good reason," he said, "or a very bad lawyer." She thought about that. "Did you fix something for somebody for this?" she asked. "You could say that," he said. "Is it because of the bathroom lady from TV?" she asked. He looked at her. "Yeah," he said. "It is because of her." Emma considered this for a long moment. "I liked her," she decided. "She said my name like it mattered." Ethan folded the deed carefully and slid it back into the envelope as if that might help keep the whole thing real. That night, the air was cool but not wet. The clouds had thinned enough for a faint slice of moon to show itself through the branches. Ethan sat on his front steps with a beer he had been saving for some occasion. He guessed this counted. Old Joe shuffled over from his porch blanket around his shoulders, mug in hand. "You look like a man who either got great news or very bad news," Joe said. "Hard to tell from here." Ethan held up the envelope. "Apparently this is my house," he said. Joe whistled low. "Well, if you are giving it away, I will take it," he said. "Deed says my name," Ethan said. "No mortgage, no strings that I can see, except the ones in my head." "Let me guess," Joe said. "The fancy woman again?" "Vivian," Ethan said. "She bought the building. Sign this over." Joe lowered himself onto the step with a grunt. "And you are mad," Joe said. "I am not mad," Ethan said. "I am suspicious." "Same thing with more thinking," Joe replied. Ethan drank the beer bitter on his tongue. "She is starting some fund," he said, "for single parents. Named it after me without asking. Wants me involved. Sit in rooms with her board. Tell them when they are full of it." Joe sipped his coffee. "Sounds like work," he said. "And a lot of people with suits and opinions," Ethan added. "You afraid they are going to put you in a tie?" Joe asked. "I am afraid they are going to turn this into a circus," Ethan said. "Photo op speeches. People like me do not usually lead those parades. We hand out the folding chairs." Joe rubbed his chin. "Did she look like she was doing this for cameras?" he asked. "Not today," Ethan said. "Today she looked like she was doing it so she could live with herself." "And you," Joe said, "are doing laps inside your skull." "I do not like being anyone's project," Ethan said. "Even a rich, grateful one." Joe stared out at the street. A stray cat trotted along the curb tail high. "Let me tell you something," Joe said. "When I was 20, I had a guy take a chance on me in a garage that smelled like gasoline and regret. Paid me under the table and above what I was worth. I thought he was trying to own me. Turned out he just hated seeing talent wasted." He looked at Ethan. "You have got a woman with more money than God dropping deeds in your lap and asking your opinion," Joe said. "You can say no. No is a complete sentence. But if you say yes, maybe a few people who look like you and that kid of yours get a better shot at not drowning every month." Ethan rolled the beer bottle between his palms. "You think I should trust her?" he said. "I think you should trust yourself," Joe said. "Trust that you will walk if she starts turning it into a show. Trust that you will say something when they try to dress you up like a mascot." A breeze moved through the trees, carrying a hint of rain that had not quite decided yet. "She said she needs my stubborn," Ethan said. Joe grinned, the lines around his eyes deepening. That she does, he said. You have got enough for 3 people. Later, when the house had settled into its familiar creaks and groans, and Emma had fallen asleep with her hand clutching the corner of the deed envelope under her pillow, Ethan sat at the table with Vivian's card in front of him. Her name was printed in small, clean letters. No title, no logo, just a number. He pressed his thumb lightly over the digits, then picked up his phone. For a long stretch, he just listened to the dial tone thumb hovering over the call button. He exhaled and pressed. She answered on the second ring. Vivian Hart, she said. It is Ethan, he said. There was a pause, then a shift in her tone, less polished somehow, closer. Hi, Ethan, she said. That was faster than I expected. I am not very good at letting things sit, he said. Neither am I, she admitted. He could hear traffic in the background muffled. Did you read it all? Enough to know lawyers got paid, he said. The good ones always do, she said. He drew a breath. I am not your mascot, he said. If I do this, if I sit in those rooms, no billboards with my face, no sib-story commercials, no one pointing a camera at my kid while she eats cereal. Agreed, she said without hesitation. I will say no if something smells wrong, he said. I will probably say it out loud. In front of people you pay a lot of money. Good, she said. They do not hear no enough. I do not slow talk, he added, or use big words when small ones work. Ethan, she said, and he could hear the almost smile, I am calling you because of that exact fact. He rubbed the back of his neck. Then yeah, he said, I will come in. Listen, tell you what I think. Once, she repeated. We will start there. When? He asked. Tomorrow, she said. 10 o'clock, Heartline Tower in Seattle. I will have a pass at the security desk under your name. He pictured an elevator that did not smell like dust floors that did not creak. I do not own a tie, he said. Good, she replied. If you showed up in a tie, they would not recognize you. The next morning, the sky over Seattle was a flat sheet of silver threatening rain, but holding off. The Heartline building rose out of the downtown grid like a slice of glass, all sharp angles and reflective panels. It caught the color of the sky and threw it back colder. Ethan stood on the sidewalk for a second, craning his neck. People in coats moved around him, heads bent over phones, coffee cups steaming in their hands. He wore his cleanest jeans, a button-down shirt with the least frayed collar, and the same boots that had carried him through muddy crawl spaces. His toolbox stayed in the truck. He had thought about bringing it, then could not decide what that would say. Inside the lobby was bigger than his entire house. Light poured in from windows that stretched floor to ceiling. There were plants that did not seem to know what dust was, and a coffee stand that smelled like roasted money. At the security desk, a man in a blazer looked up. Name, he asked. Ethan Cole, he said. The guard type checked his screen, then slid a visitor badge across the counter. 32nd floor, he said. Someone will meet you at the elevator. The elevator ride felt like stepping through slices of different worlds. The ground floor lobby, the mid-level with its open office and the hum of phones. Higher floors with quiet carpet and soft voices. When the doors opened on 32, a man in a crisp shirt and tie was waiting. Asian mid-30s, efficient posture. He smiled. Mr. Cole, he asked. He asked. That is me, Ethan said. I am Marcus, the man said. Ms. Hart's assistant. She is finishing a call. I will take you to the conference room. They walked past glass-walled offices where people sat in front of multiple monitors, faces lit by charts and code. Everything smelled like paper and filtered air. You pulled her out of the car, Marcus said, not quite a question. She was in the way of the tree, Ethan said. Marcus's smile deepened for a flicker. She is not easy to pull anywhere, he said. You should know that about her. The conference room was long and bright, one entire wall glass, looking out over the city and the water beyond. Rain streaks smudged the outside of the glass. On the table sat bottles of water, a few neatly stacked folders, a tablet. Ethan sat where Marcus indicated, near the middle, not quite at the head. You can leave that open, he said, nodding at the door. Marcus obliged. Footsteps and voices filtered in from the hallway, a softened buzz. Vivian entered a minute later, no coat this time, just a dark blazer over a gray top. Her hair was pulled back, exposing the faint scar at her hairline beneath the fading bruise. Ethan, she said, you found it. I followed the gravity well of expensive coffee, he replied. Her mouth curved. Marcus, can you gather everyone? She said. Soon the room filled. A woman with sharp glasses and a tablet introduced as Mel, head of communications. A man with a tie so neat it looked ironed on Paul from finance. Another woman with kind eyes and a stack of folders, Jan from HR. Vivian took a place at the head of the table, but her focus stayed on Ethan. I asked you all here because we are formalizing the Cole Fund, she said. Housing support, job training, childcare stipends. You have seen the outline. She nodded to Mel, who tapped the tablet. The screen at the far end of the room lit up with a logo. Simple, a small house shape with the word Cole underneath. Ethan shifted in his chair, every pair of eyes landing on him for a heartbeat. We want to build a narrative around this, Mel said. Something that shows Heartline cares about real people, not just products. Ethan's story is compelling. Single dad, blue collar, saved our CEO, refused payment, media loves that. We could do a video series, a campaign. Integrity lives next door. She spoke in clean, smooth sentences. Ethan could feel himself receding from his own story, while she framed it in phrases that fit neatly on a banner. Jan flipped through the folders. The need is real, she said. There are a lot of employees and people in our manufacturing network who are one bill away from crisis. We could start internally and then open it to the community. Paul tapped his pen. As long as there are clear guidelines, he said. We need metrics, outcomes. It cannot just be writing checks because it feels good. Vivian listened, one ankle crossed over the other. And you, Ethan, she asked. What do you think so far? He considered his words. The room hummed quietly with the air conditioner. Feels a little like I am being turned into a brand, he said. Mel's pen paused. It helps if people can see a face, she said. Gives the fund a human anchor. I am human enough in my own neighborhood, he said. I do not need to be on billboards to prove it. Mel pursed her lips. With respect, this is how we reach donors, partners, the press, she said. I thought you were funding it, Ethan said, looking at Vivian. I am, Vivian said, but Mel is not wrong. Visibility can amplify impact. Ethan shook his head once. I am not comfortable putting my kid out there as part of a story, he said. We are not props. We go to school, eat pancakes, argue about bedtime. That is ours. A small silence followed, not hostile, just new. Andy spoke up again. We can anonymize some details, Mel suggested. Shoot from behind, focus on hands, tools, things like that. Ethan tapped his fingers on the table. You want to show something? He said. Show the leak in a ceiling. Show the pile of overdue notices on a kitchen table. Show the father who cannot take a promotion because he has no one to watch his kid at night. He looked at Vivian. If you want this to matter, he said, keep it simple. Pay a month of rent when someone is drowning. Cover half the cost of a training course so they can get a better job. Give them a voucher for after-school care so they can work the late shift without feeling like a bad parent. He sat back. You do not need my face for that, he said. You just need to stop making people prove they deserve not to sink. Jan watched him with an expression that looked like relief. That is exactly the perspective we need, she said. Paul scribbled a note, lips pressed together. Mel blew out a gentle breath. Maybe the story we tell is less about a hero and more about the system, she said slowly. We can feature scenarios instead of one person. Vivian had not taken her eyes off Ethan. I told you he would not want the lights on him, she said to the room. That is one of the reasons he is here. She looked back at him. No cameras without your consent, she said. Non-negotiable. You sound like you mean that, he said. I do, she said. They moved on to specifics then. How applications might work. How to avoid endless paperwork. Ethan spoke when he had something to add, stayed quiet when he did not. He did not understand every term they used. He understood the stories behind them. A woman who had called him last winter because her heat stopped working and she had a feverish toddler. A man who had paid him in 2 installments for a simple repair because his paycheck was already cut by child support and debt. By the end of the hour, there was the rough outline of something real, not polished, not yet abused by marketing, just an idea with some bones. The group dispersed with nods and murmured plans. Marcus collected stray papers. Vivian stayed where she was, watching the city through the glass for a moment, then turned back to him. You handled yourself well, she said. I did not throw a chair, he said, so that is a win. I have seen people throw chairs in that room for less, she replied. They walked out together, the click of her shoes and the steady thump of his boots, oddly in step. In the elevator, the mirrored walls reflected them from all angles. Him in his shirt that did not quite fit the room. Her in her tailored jacket that fit it perfectly and somehow looked a little less severe today. Do you regret not taking the money the first morning? She asked suddenly. He caught her reflection watching him. No, he said. Do you regret offering it that way? Yes, she said. I was trying to solve a problem with the only tool I trusted at the time. He thought of his toolbox the way he reached for the same wrench for half his jobs. You have more tools now, he said. She tilted her head. I have better advisors, she replied. The elevator doors opened on the lobby. The smell of expensive coffee drifted toward them again. Outside, the first drops of a new rain had started to mark the pavement. At the curb, Ethan paused. I still fix pipes, he said. That is not going to change. Good, she said. The world needs its pipes fixed, and its foundations. He nodded once, then headed toward his truck. The Heartline building rose behind him, glass catching the gray light. In the cab, his hands found the familiar roughness of the steering wheel. The visitor badge still clung to his shirt. He peeled it off and set it on the dash. On the passenger seat where the deed had sat the day before, there was only his lunchbox now. He rested his hand on it for a second, then started the engine and pulled back into the river of cars that flowed toward neighborhoods like his. The days that followed felt like learning a new job without quitting the old one. In the mornings, Ethan still crawled under sinks and onto roofs, still wrapped his hands around cold metal and coaxed stubborn joints to turn. In the afternoons, on the days he could spare, he drove to addresses that showed up in emails from Jan at Heartline, lists of names that had been pulled from applications and polite pleas. The first visit was to a second-floor apartment that smelled like boiled rice and baby powder. The hallway carpet was worn flat in the middle, the pattern only visible at the edges. A woman with tired eyes and a bright scarf opened the door. Two little boys peered from behind her legs, fingers sticky with something orange. You are from the fund, she said. I did not think you would actually come here. We are better at real places than spreadsheets, Ethan said. Vivian stood beside him, simple gray sweater, dark jeans, hair pulled back. She carried a tablet in one hand, but she slid it into her bag as they stepped inside. They sat at a small table meant for 4 that could barely fit 3 plates. The woman explained between glances at the pot on the stove that she worked nights at the hospital laundry, that the daycare bill took half of what she made. That one broken timing belt had eaten the rest. I keep thinking if I work harder it will be enough, she said. But every time something breaks, I have to choose which bill to ignore. Vivian listened more than she talked. Her eyes moved from the unpaid notice on the counter to the taped-up window and back to the woman's face. How much is the rent here? Vivian asked eventually. The woman named a number that made Ethan think of the deed in his kitchen drawer. We can cover a month, Vivian said. Maybe 2 if you let us help you look at your other costs. Childcare, transportation. We will not ask you to fill out 50 forms to do it. The woman's eyes filled suddenly. She looked down at her hands, embarrassed. I do not like asking, she said. Feels like begging. You are not begging, Ethan said. You are breathing. There is a difference. Vivian did not flinch at the word begging the way Ethan had expected someone in her position to flinch. She just nodded. We will keep this as simple as we can, she said. You do not owe us a story to earn help. You already told us enough. On another afternoon, they met a man in a small house that sat too close to the freeway. His daughter did her homework at the kitchen table, while Ethan listened to him talk about how he turned down a night shift supervisor role because no one could watch her after 8. Everybody keeps saying work harder, the man said. I got hours offered. I cannot take them. I am not going to leave her alone so some stranger can break in or some pot on the stove can burn down the block. Vivian sat in a chair that wobbled under her the same way it wobbled under everyone else. She did not adjust it. She did not straighten her clothes. Would you take the hours if you had a safe place for her to be until you got off? She asked. In a second, he said. They wrote an application for childcare funds with him. Right there at the table, Ethan filling in some of the lines when the man stumbled over the official language. It took 10 minutes. Then another 10 because Vivian insisted on cutting 3 questions from the form, and Jan on the other end of a video call did not argue. Sometimes the help was small. A week of groceries, a card for school supplies. Sometimes it was bigger, the fund matching deposits for a family moving out of a motel. Each time Ethan felt the shape of something forming uneven but solid. He noticed other changes too. Vivian stopped wearing her most expensive heels to these visits. The first time she sank half an inch into the mud in front of a trailer, she grimaced, then returned the next day in shoes she could hose off. Her coat picked up a small tear on the sleeve from a protruding nail. She did not replace it. Her tablet started appearing on tables alongside Ethan's open toolbox. At one apartment, he set his wrench down next to her sleek device and thought for a second that they looked like 2 different languages sharing a sentence. They began to move around each other with a rhythm that surprised him. She watched the way he spoke to people who were one emergency away from disaster without making them feel smaller. He watched the way she handled landlords, social workers, and the occasional skeptical partner with a calm he did not possess. Once as they left a building where the hallway smelled like fried onions and bleach, she stopped at the top of the stairs and looked back. "If I had met you 10 years ago," she said, "I might have built this fund instead of the last 3 products." "You built what you knew," he said. "And what made money?" she replied. Those 2 things got tangled up. They were still untangling. By the time the leaves that had survived the storms turned fully, a quiet routine had settled. Fun days, fixing days, dad days. Most of them were combinations. One Friday, after a particularly long stretch of meetings and visits, Vivian drove Ethan back to his house, instead of letting him take the bus from downtown. The rain had taken the night off. Moisture hung in the air, but the sky was clear enough to show a handful of stars. Emma was waiting on the porch steps, legs swinging, jacket zipped up to her chin. "You are late," she said as Ethan stepped out of the car. "The movie started without you." "What movie?" he asked. "The one in my head," she said. "I was bored." She saw Vivian coming around the front of the car and straightened her face, lighting up. "Hi, Vivian," she said. "Did you go save more grown-ups today?" "We tried not to break anything," Vivian said. "Your dad did most of the saving." "That is his job," Emma said matter-of-factly. "Do you want pancakes?" Ethan locked the car door with a quick glance at Vivian. He had not planned on hosting anyone. The house was as clean as it ever got, which meant there were no obvious trip hazards and only one mug in the sink. "It is pretty late for pancakes," he said. "Pancakes are never late," Emma said. "Pancakes are eternal." Vivian looked amused. "I would never argue with eternal," she said. Inside, the house smelled like crayons and whatever old Joe had been cooking earlier that had drifted through the thin walls. Ethan shrugged off his jacket and went to the kitchen automatically. He pulled out the familiar yellow box and the dented bowl. The motions were ingrained now. Measure, whisk, heat the pan. Butter crackled, the sound soothing. Vivian stood at the edge of the kitchen, not quite in the way, not quite out of it. Her posture relaxed more here than Ethan had ever seen in the glass tower downtown. Emma sat at the table with her latest creation, a cardboard robot with foil taped to its arms. "This one is going to shoot lasers from its eyes," she announced. "Please do not tell Ms. Ramirez that," Ethan said. "It is pretend," Emma said. "The lasers are math." Vivian leaned over the robot, interested. "Why the foil?" she asked. Emma brightened at the attention. "It makes it reflective," she said. "So if it goes to space, it will not get too hot. Also, it looks cooler." "You wanted to go to space?" Vivian asked. "Maybe," Emma said. "But also, I kind of want to build things that go to space. Ms. Ramirez says I'm good at science." "She is," Ethan said, flipping the first pancake. Vivian glanced at the stove. "You make these a lot," she said. "They are cheap and they keep," he said. "And she eats them without arguing. That last part is the important one." "Mr. Cole says we are rich when we have pancakes," Emma chimed in. "He says it every time." Vivian's eyes softened. "Do you believe him?" she asked. Emma shrugged. "I believe he wants me to," she said. Ethan slid a pancake onto a plate and set it in front of Emma. Syrup pooled on the surface as she poured slowly with the seriousness of surgery. He made another and put it on the second plate, then hesitated. Vivian had taken off her coat and draped it over the back of a chair. The kitchen light caught faint streaks of silver in her hair he had not noticed before. "You want the first one or the second?" he asked. "The second," she said. "I trust your learning curve." He snorted softly. Emma watched them, head tilted. "Dad looks at pancakes like they are magic," she said suddenly. Ethan paused mid-pour. "That is because they are," he said. "Watch this. Flour and water turn into joy." Emma ignored him. "He kind of looks at you the same lately," she told Vivian. The room went very quiet for half a second. The only sound was the low hiss of the pan. Ethan felt his face get hot. "Emma," he said. "What?" she asked, entirely sincere. "You do. It is not my fault that your eyes do things." Vivian had gone very still. Then slowly the corners of her mouth curved. Not the polished smile she gave cameras, but something warmer, small, and surprised, like a candle being lit. "Your dad looks at a lot of things like they are magic," she said. "Pipes that do not leak. Wires that do not spark. You." "He should," Emma said. "I am magical." "There is no arguing with that," Ethan said. They ate at the table that night like it was the most normal thing in the world. Sticky plates, too much syrup, a robot at the center like a tiny metal referee. After Emma brushed her teeth and went to get into bed, she stopped in the doorway of her small room. "Are you staying?" she asked Vivian. For dinner, Vivian said. Yes. For bedtime, no. I have some very boring emails to read. You should stay for a story sometime, Emma said. Dad does the voices. I am sure he does, Vivian said. When Emma was settled under her blanket, Ethan and Vivian stood in the hall a moment, listening to the rustle of pages as Emma flipped through her book. You have a good kid, Vivian said quietly. I got lucky, he said. You worked for it, she replied. He shrugged, uncomfortable under the compliment. She likes you, he said. I like her more than most board members, Vivian said. They both smiled at that. In the weeks that followed, talk of the fund grew louder inside Heartline. Emails went out. Meetings multiplied. Numbers were discussed, projected, revised. At some point, someone in communications said the word launch, and the air in the conference room shifted. Mel put together a slide deck with concept art, all clean lines and hopeful fonts. She talked about media partners, guest lists, timing. There was a suggestion of a red carpet. The phrase signature cocktails floated through the air like it was just another harmless detail. Ethan sat at the end of the table that day, arms crossed, listening. He could feel the event growing in their minds the way ivy crept up brick walls. This is not a product release, he said finally. Mel paused. It is an announcement, she said. We want people to know. You can tell people without putting spotlights on families who are just trying to stay afloat, he said. No one should have to stand under a chandelier and say thank you for help paying rent. Jan nodded slowly. He has a point, she said. We have to be careful not to turn this into a performance. Vivian looked from one face to another, then back at Ethan. What would it look like to you? She asked. He thought of the kitchen tables he had sat at, the scuffed floors, the careful way people had told their stories like they were giving away pieces of themselves. Smaller, he said. Less shiny. Invite the people doing the work. Social workers, teachers, case managers. Some parents if they want to be there, not because they feel like they have to. He rubbed a thumb along the seam of the table. You want a speech, he added. Let it be about what this will do, not about who gets credit. The room was quiet. Out of the glass wall, rain streaked the windows again, the city blurred. Vivian tapped her pen lightly against her notebook. We scale it down, she said to Mel. Cut the performative parts. Keep the pieces that actually connect people to the fund. Mel exhaled, shoulders dropping a fraction. We can work with that, she said. Ethan did not know it then, but the evening they were shaping in that room would end with him standing behind a microphone, heart hammering, trying to turn the way his life had cracked open in a storm into something that could fit into a few minutes of words. The community center did not look like much from the outside. It sat between a shuttered furniture store and a laundromat, red brick darkened by years of rain. On the evening of the launch, its windows glowed a warm yellow against the gray. Cars lined the curb, some sleek, some with rust along the wheel wells. Ethan parked his truck 2 blocks away. He sat for a moment with his hands on the wheel, feeling the stiffness of the borrowed suit coat across his shoulders. Old Joe had found it in the back of a closet, muttering something about weddings from a decade ago. The fabric pulled a little when he moved his arms. Emma bounced on the seat beside him, in a simple blue dress, hair braided by Ms. Ramirez at the end of the school day. Her sneakers flashed whenever she swung her feet. You look weird, she said. That is not helpful, he replied. In a good way, she added quickly, like a teacher on picture day. He smiled despite the tightness in his chest. You look great, he said. You sure you want to sit through grown-up talking time? There is juice and snacks, she said. I will survive. They walked the last stretch together. The air smelled like wet concrete and the lemon cleaner someone had used on the entry floor. A banner hung above the doors, simple white cloth with dark blue letters. The Cole Fund for Single Parents, Heartline Systems, Community Launch. Inside the lobby was crowded in a way that did not feel like a gala. No red carpet, no photographers shouting names. Just teachers, social workers, a few reporters with notepads, parents in their best shirts and dresses, some of them pulling at collars, not used to this kind of gathering. Round tables filled the main hall. Clips of paper marked reserved seats for organizations and partner groups. A buffet of sandwiches and vegetables curved along one wall. Coffee urns steamed quietly. Ethan recognized faces. Ms. Ramirez was there talking with a counselor he had seen at the school. The woman with the bright scarf from the second-floor apartment waved shyly from a table near the back. The man from the house by the freeway stood in a corner, his daughter holding his hand, and looking up at everything with wide eyes. A small stage sat at the front, nothing fancy. Just a low platform, a podium, a microphone, a simple backdrop with the fund's logo. Vivian stood near the stage speaking with a cluster of people in worn jackets and good shoes. She wore a dark green dress that fell cleanly to her knees, more understated than anything he had seen her wear in the tower. A lanyard with a simple name badge hung around her neck. Her hair was loose, curled slightly at the ends. When she caught sight of Ethan and Emma, something relaxed in her posture. "You made it," she said. "Emma threatened to come without me," he said. "I did not," Emma protested. Vivian crouched a little to meet Emma's eyes. "You look beautiful," she said. "I have pockets," Emma said, lifting the edge of her dress to show them. "So, I can carry important stuff." "That is the only kind of dress worth wearing," Vivian said. Emma beamed and ran off toward the snack table drawn by a plate of cookies. Vivian straightened. "You clean up well," she said to Ethan. "Joe did you a favor. He threatened to haunt me if I wrinkled this," Ethan said. "You should sit near the front," she said. "There are a couple of things on the program you should hear." "A couple," he repeated. She gave him a small, unreadable smile. The lights dimmed slightly as people found seats. A low murmur settled over the room. On the stage, a local community leader stepped up to the microphone to welcome everyone, voice smooth and practiced. He spoke about partnership, about investing in families, about how small supports can ripple outward. Ethan listened with half his attention, the other half aware of the way the suit collar brushed the back of his neck, the way Emma swung her legs under the chair heel tapping the rung. Then the speaker introduced Vivian. She walked up to the podium from the side, the small stack of notes in her hand, more prop than necessity. The room hushed on its own. "Thank you for coming," she said. The microphone carried her voice clearly. It sounded different here than on television. Less polished, somehow more human. "I spend most of my days in rooms with glass walls and too much fluorescent lighting," she said. "We talk about markets, lines of code, launch timelines. Important things in their own way." She glanced at the crowd. "But those rooms are a long way from the kitchens where parents stare at a stack of bills and try to decide which one can wait this month," she said. "They are a long way from the hallways where children pretend not to hear their grown-ups whisper about rent." A murmur moved through the audience, soft agreement. "I grew up in places like that," she said. "Different walls, same questions." She let that sit with them for a moment. "A few months ago, on a night that looked a lot like tonight, I made a bad decision on a wet road," she continued. "I walked away from it because a stranger did not." Eyes turned toward Ethan even before she spoke his name. He felt the weight of their attention like a hand on his back. "He pulled me out of my car, took me into his home, gave me his bed, and refused to turn that moment into a transaction," she said. "When I offered him money, he had every reason to need. He pushed it back and told me I could not buy what he had just done." Her gaze found him near the front. For a second, the room fell away. It was just the kitchen, the table, the stack of bills between them. "That stayed with me," she said. "It forced me to look at what I had built and what I had ignored. It made me remember the people who helped me when they had nothing to gain." She lifted her chin slightly. "This fund exists because of that stranger," she said. "It exists for every parent who keeps showing up, even when the math does not work. It exists so that the next time a crisis hits, they have somewhere to turn that does not ask them to empty their dignity at the door." She set her notes aside. "I would like you to meet him," she said. "Ethan Cole, would you come up here, please?" The room turned as one. Chairs creaked as heads swiveled. Emma stared at him, eyes wide as if she had not known this part was coming. "You did not tell me," she whispered. "That makes two of us," he murmured back. His legs did not feel entirely like his when he stood. The distance from the table to the stage seemed longer than all the stairways in the Heartline Tower. He could hear his heart beating in his ears. The hum of the microphone, the rustle of clothing all mixed into one. He climbed the 2 steps onto the platform. Vivian stepped aside, giving him room behind the podium. The microphone sat at an awkward height. He adjusted it with hands that felt too big. 100 faces watched him, some expecting something polished, some expecting nothing at all. He cleared his throat. "I am not a public speaker," he said. "I fix things." A small laugh rippled through the room. "Pipes," he said. "Wires. Dryers that decide to die in the middle of a school night. That is my usual audience. They do not judge my word choice." More soft chuckles. His shoulders dropped by a fraction. "I am also a single dad," he said, "which means my job description includes cook, math coach, bedtime negotiator, and person who explains why we cannot adopt every stray animal in the city." Emma grinned at that. "The thing about fixing things," he went on, "is that you usually do not notice the work when it is done well. You only notice when something breaks, when water is where it should not be, when a light goes out, when a roof leaks." He thought of the pot under his ceiling. "Being a single parent is a lot like that," he said. Most days you keep things held together with whatever you have. Tape, leftovers, jokes. You do not have time to think about how thin some of those fixes are until something big hits. A job cut, a medical bill, a car that will not start on the one day you needed it to. He rested his hands lightly on the podium. "The night I met Vivian, it was raining hard," he said. "The roads were flooded. I saw a car where it should not be. I did what I hope anyone here would do. I stopped. I pulled her out. I took her home because it was closer than the hospital." He shrugged slightly. "It was not hero work," he said. "It was human work." The room was very quiet now. The hum of the exit sign seemed loud. "When she showed up later with papers for my house and this idea for a fund, I did not trust it at first," he said. "I did not want to be a story someone told to make themselves feel better." He glanced at Vivian, then back at the crowd. "Then I started meeting people through this thing," he said. "Parents who were doing everything right and still losing ground. People who just needed a month of breathing room, a little help with childcare, a chance to take one step forward without sliding 3 back." He leaned in a little. "If you are in this room, you know someone like that," he said. "Maybe you are someone like that." A few heads lowered, hands tightened around cups. "This fund is not a miracle," he said. "It will not fix everything. What it can do is show up in the small ways that matter. Keep a family from getting an eviction notice. Help a dad take a better shift. Cover the cost of a program that lets a kid stay in a place where someone knows their name." He took a breath. "People like me are used to feeling invisible in rooms like this," he said. "We are used to being the ones who sweep up after events, not the ones who speak at them." He looked at the faces in front of him, the worn collars, the neat dresses, the kids peeking from behind chairs. "You are not invisible," he said. "Not to your kids, not to the people who see how hard you are working. And if this fund does what it is supposed to, not to us either." He stepped back from the microphone. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then the room rose. Chairs scraped as people stood. Applause rolled over him louder than any storm he had driven through. He felt heat climb into his face. Vivian returned to the podium, her hand brushing his for a second, a brief squeeze that said more than any word. They finished the program with less ceremony. A brief outline of how the fund would operate, thank yous to partners, an invitation to eat and talk. People drifted toward the food toward each other. Ethan made it off the stage and to the side before the first person approached him. A woman from the school district, a man from a shelter, a couple of parents who just wanted to say they understood. Emma found her way to his side and slipped her hand into his. "You did not fall over," she said. "High bar, but I cleared it," he said. "Everyone clapped," she added. "They were just happy I stopped talking," he said. After a while, when the hum of conversation had grown steady and Emma was deep in discussion with the man's daughter about robots, Ethan stepped out into the hallway for some air. The corridor was dimmer, the buzz of the main room muffled by painted cinder blocks. The smell of coffee and food faded, replaced by the faint scent of cleaning supplies and old posters taped to the walls. Vivian was there, leaning against the cool concrete, her head tilted back, eyes closed for a brief moment. "You hiding too?" he asked. She opened her eyes. "Regrouping," she said. "You did well. I did not say anything you did not already know," he said. "But they needed to hear it from you," she replied. "Not from me." She pushed off the wall and reached into her bag. "I have something for you," she said. "If it is another house, we are going to fight in this hallway," he said. She laughed softly and held out a small box instead, plain and dark. He took it. The cardboard was smooth under his fingers. He lifted the lid. A pen lay inside, simple and solid black, with a silver clip. Along the barrel, tiny letters were etched in careful script. "To the man who did not sell the storm." His throat tightened. He closed the box for a second, then opened it again as if the words might change. "You did not have to do this," he said. "I know," she said. "I wanted to." He turned the pen between his fingers. "You keep trying to give me things," he said. "You ever gonna run out?" "Unlikely," she said, "but I am selective." He looked up. Her eyes were not the careful public ones he had seen on screens. They were tired around the edges, bright in the middle. "You changed my life," she said quietly. "I thought you should have something more permanent than a visitor badge to show for it." "You changed mine too," he said. They stood there for a moment in the low light, the sounds of the event a gentle roar in the background. Somewhere down the hall, a door closed and footsteps echoed briefly, then faded. Ethan slipped the pen back into its box and tucked it into an inside pocket of the suit that did not belong to him. "Guess we are in this now," he said. "Guess we are," she answered. Then they went back into the bright room together, where their names were on a banner and a fund with both of their fingerprints on it had just begun. A year later, the rain sounded different. It still came, often still streaked down the windows of Tacoma in long, quiet lines, but in the big front window of Cole Mechanics, it was just a backdrop now, not a threat. The shop sat on a corner that used to be a tire place. The old sign had been replaced with a clean painted board that read, Cole Mechanics, in partnership with the Cole Fund. Inside, the air smelled like oil rubber and fresh coffee from the machine Emma had insisted they buy. Light spilled from the overhead fixtures onto concrete that had seen decades of spills and scrapes, now swept and mostly clean. Ethan stood beside an open hood, hands deep in the guts of a compact sedan. 3 teenagers in gray coveralls watched his movements closely. All of them were from families touched by the fund in one way or another. 2 of them had never held a wrench before they walked in here. "You feel it?" he asked, guiding the smallest boy's hand toward the belt. The kid frowned, concentrating. "It is loose," he said. "Exactly," Ethan said. "Too loose and it chews itself up. Too tight and it snaps. You want that in between." He let the boy hold the tool, correcting his grip with a light touch. "They are not going to let us touch any of the good cars," one of the older teens muttered. "They let me touch the good cars when I was 17, Ethan said, which is how I learned to stop calling them good cars and start calling them customers. They laughed. The sound echoed off the open bays. The bell over the front door chimed. Ethan glanced up, expecting another client, maybe old Joe coming by for his daily free coffee. Vivian walked in instead. She was dressed in jeans and sneakers, a long coat unbuttoned over a white shirt that tugged at something familiar in his chest. The collar, the way it fell against her shoulders. His shirt. The same one she had worn in his kitchen that first morning, now pressed and slightly softened from use. Rain dotted the shoulders of her coat. She took it off and draped it over a chair by the office door. "You are invading my territory," Ethan called. "Your sign says partnership," she said. "I am just holding it to that." The teens straightened a little, unsure if they should keep working or stand at attention. Vivian gave them a small nod, walking between the lifts with careful steps, taking in the tool racks, the neat rows of labeled drawers. "This place looks good," she said. "Smells terrible, in a respectable way." Ethan wiped his hands on a rag. "It is small," he said. "It is yours," she replied. He caught himself glancing at the shirt again. She noticed. "I told you I would have it cleaned and returned," she said. "This counts." "It really does look better on you," he said. One of the teens made a sound that was half cough, half laugh. Ethan shot him a look, and he bent his head quickly over the engine. Later, when the afternoon rush had thinned, and the kids had gone home with grease on their hands and something like pride on their faces, Ethan turned the sign on the door to closed. Rain misted the parking lot. The streetlights had started to flicker on. Emma burst in from the small office in the back paper clutched in one hand, eyes huge. "Dad," she said, breathless, "you have to read this." "Is the building on fire?" he asked. "No." "Is the coffee machine broken?" "No." "Then we can walk, not run," he said. She practically dragged him to the office anyway. Vivian followed, curiosity in her eyes. On the desk sat an envelope with the school district logo. Emma slapped the paper onto it. The letterhead was from a local science institute. Ethan read the first paragraph once, then again. "She got a scholarship," Vivian said, reading over his shoulder. "Summer STEM program. Full tuition stipend, lab access." Emma bounced on her toes. "They said my project was cool," she said. "They want me to come build things, real things, not just cardboard robots." "They picked a good kid," Vivian said. Emma flung herself at her arms, wrapping around Vivian's waist. Vivian staggered half a step, then steadied her hands, landing on Emma's shoulders, then her back. The hug was quick, but real. "I am so proud of you," Vivian said into her hair. "Ms. Ramirez helped me with the essay," Emma said. "She said I should write about pipes and pancakes." "That sounds accurate," Ethan said. They celebrated with takeout noodles eaten at the workbench, sitting on overturned buckets. Emma talked about rocket parts and circuits until the food was gone, and her words started to slow. When she finally fell asleep in the office chair, curled up with her jacket as a pillow, Ethan lifted her gently and carried her out to the truck. The rain had thickened into a soft, steady curtain. Vivian stayed behind in the shop, walking slowly down the rows of tools, fingertips brushing the labels on each drawer. By the time Ethan came back, the garage was quiet, except for the rain and the faint ticking of a cooling engine. He found Vivian standing near the back bay where an old truck frame sat on blocks, bare metal, sanded, primed in places, a work in progress. "That the famous beast?" she asked. "The one from the tree," he said. "Well, the pieces that were worth saving. Joe helped me tow it here. We have been bringing it back from the dead on slow days." She ran her hand along the edge of the fender, respectful. "You kept it," she said. "I figured if it survived an argument with a fir tree, it deserved another shot," he said. "And I like projects." She looked at him, eyes softer than the shop lights. "I understand that," she said. They stood side by side for a while, watching a bead of water slide down the truck's hood from a leak in the bay roof. The drip hit the concrete with a faint sound that made Ethan think of the pot in his living room, now mostly retired. "You ever get tired?" he asked quietly. "Of what?" she said. "Carrying all this," he said. "Company, fund, media, me. Some days," she said, "then I come here and watch you teach a kid how to hold a wrench. It resets the scale." There was a tiredness around her eyes tonight he had not seen during the launch event months ago. It was not the brittle kind, more like the weight of someone finally letting themselves sit down. "You said something once," she added, "about me being used to paying to make discomfort go away." "I remember," he said. "I am still fighting that instinct," she said. "But this year has been the first time I have felt like I am not just buying silence. I am participating." Rain drummed softly on the roof. Somewhere outside, a car passed tires hissing on wet pavement. She turned toward him fully, then hands sliding into the pockets of his shirt. "There is one thing I am still bad at," she said. "Only one?" he asked. "Asking for what I want," she said, without attaching a contract or a donation form. He watched her the way her shoulders rose and fell. "When I was a kid," she went on, "every ask felt dangerous. Ask to stay. Ask for an extra blanket. Ask to keep a book. Sometimes the answer was yes. Sometimes the answer was a new address and a black trash bag." He stayed quiet. "So I built a life where no one could kick me out," she said. "Boardroom instead of Balsta bedroom. Signatures instead of requests. It worked for a long time." Her gaze drifted to the truck, then back to him. "Then a man with a leaky roof and an old truck told me no," she said, "and then yes, but on his terms." "Stubborn," he said. "Honest," she replied. She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. It was cream-colored, heavier than the ones that had brought overdue notices and bad news, unsealed but closed. She held it out to him. "You do not have to open this tonight," she said. "In fact, I would prefer you do not." He frowned. "What is it?" he asked. "A question," she said. "One I am still too scared to say out loud." "I thought you were getting better at that," he said. "I am," she said. "You are my last big test." He took the envelope. It warmed quickly in his hand. "Why tomorrow?" he asked. "Because I want you to sleep on the fact that there is a question," she said. "And when you read it, I want it to be in your kitchen, with your coffee, with Emma around, in your world, not mine." He turned it over. His name was written on the front in her handwriting, deliberate and precise. "You are not going to tell me anything else," he said. "That would defeat the purpose," she said. He slid the envelope into the inner pocket of his jacket, next to the spot where he kept the pen. She stepped closer, then close enough that he could smell her shampoo under the faint scent of engine oil. "You make me feel things I forgot I could feel," she said quietly, "like I am not just visiting my own life." He swallowed, heartbeat loud in his ears. "You are not visiting," he said. Her hand came up, fingertips brushing his jaw, rough with end-of-day stubble. "Open it tomorrow," she said. "Whatever you decide, we will deal with it." She dropped her hand, stepped back, and walked toward the front of the shop. At the door, she paused. "Lock up," she said over her shoulder. "This place is worth keeping." Then she pushed the door open and stepped into the raincoat pulled tight over his shirt, the bell chiming once behind her as the door closed. That night, the envelope sat on his dresser, like a small, quiet planet with its own gravity. Ethan brushed his teeth, turned off the lights, and lay awake longer than usual, listening to the familiar creaks of the house and the softer breathing of his daughter in the next room. He did not open it. Morning would come soon enough. Morning came slow and pale, slipping around the edges of the curtains. Ethan lay on his back, staring at the ceiling. The house smelled faintly like coffee from the timer he had set the night before. In the next room, Emma turned over in her sleep, mumbling something about rockets. The envelope sat where he had left it on top of his dresser cream against the scratched wood. He got up, pulled on a t-shirt, and padded to the kitchen. The coffee machine finished its cycle with a small sigh. He poured a mug, the warmth steady in his hand, then reached for the yellow box of pancake mix. By the time Emma shuffled in hair wild, rubbing her eyes, the first pancake was already in the pan. "You only make pancakes on important mornings," she said, climbing onto her usual chair. "Every morning you wake up is important," he said. "That is not what I mean, and you know it," she replied. He flipped, the pancake shrugged. "We got mail," he said, "from the most dramatic person we know." "Ms. Ramirez?" Emma asked. "The other one?" he said. Her eyes went wide. "Vivian," she whispered. He set a plate in front of her, syrup glistening on the surface, then walked to the dresser and picked up the envelope. The paper felt heavier than it had last night, as if it had absorbed his hesitation. He sat at the table. Emma watched, fork held still. "You going to open it, or just stare at it until it opens itself?" she asked. "Working up to it," he said. He slid a finger under the flap and tore it cleanly. Inside was a folded card, and something thicker, like another piece of paper behind it. He pulled out the card first. His name was written at the top, the letters even. He read, "Ethan, you pulled me out of a storm once. I thought that was all you had done. I was wrong. You pulled me out of a version of myself that could look at a burning car and only see liability. You handed me a night where kindness had no price tag in a kitchen with bad lighting and a leaking ceiling. You made me remember what it felt like to need help and still keep your head up. Since that night, you have argued with me, corrected me, teased me, and stood next to me while we tried to build something that might matter. You have opened your home, your shop, and your stubborn brain to me and to a lot of strangers. You are the first person in a long time who tells me no without flinching and yes without checking a contract. I do not want to imagine my days without your toolbox on my floor, your coffee in my cup, and your daughter at my kitchen table. I am not asking because I owe you. I am asking because I want to spend the rest of my life in the same storm as you, holding the same umbrella over the same kid. Will you marry me, Vivian?" His vision blurred for a second. He blinked hard. The words steadied again. There was a second paper behind the card. He unfolded it. An invite. Simple. White with black print. The wedding of Vivian Hart and Ethan Cole, date and place left blank waiting. Emma put her fork down slowly. "You are crying," she said. "I noticed," he said, voice rough. "Is it a bad letter?" she asked. She asked. He handed it to her. She read with her finger under each line, lips moving. By the time she reached the question, her mouth had dropped open. "So," she said, "she's going to be my mom now?" He let out a long breath that came out halfway between a laugh and something else. "That depends," he said. "On what?" Emma demanded. "On whether you like that idea," he said. She did not hesitate. "More than I like pancakes," she said, "and I like pancakes a lot." He laughed. It broke fully this time, the sound pushing against the sting behind his eyes. "Then yes," he said quietly, "she is going to be your mom." Emma launched herself at him, almost knocking the letter out of his hand. He caught her, lifted her onto his lap, held on, while she vibrated with happiness. "We have to tell her right now," she said. "We will call her," he said. "Maybe let her finish her coffee first." The months that followed filled quickly, not with fancy planning, though some of that happened, but with small choices. Backyard or rented hall, cake or pie, who to invite, who to ask to watch the kids while vows were said. In the end, they chose their own backyard. On the day, the sky cooperated just enough. Clouds gathered in a soft lid overhead, but the rain stayed in their bellies. The grass was a little damp from the night before, the air cool and clean. Strings of lights crisscrossed above the yard hung from the fence to the eaves. Folding chairs borrowed from the community center lined up in uneven rows. Old Joe sat in the front, tie askew, pride clear in every wrinkle. Ms. Ramirez dabbed her eyes before anything had even started. Emma wore a white dress that she insisted on pairing with her favorite sneakers. She stood between them at the makeshift arch as the officiant, a friend from the fun team who had the right license and the right sense of humor, read the words. "Do you, Ethan Cole, take this woman who once tried to pay you for doing the right thing to be your wife?" he asked. "I do," Ethan said. The words were simple. They rang clear. "Do you, Vivian Hart, take this man who talks to pipes like they can hear him to be your husband?" the officiant asked. Vivian's eyes shone. "I do," she said. "That was fast," the officiant teased. "I have been waiting a while," she replied. Someone sniffled loudly. It might have been Joe. It might have been Paul from finance. They kissed. It was not dramatic, not perfect, just them. Emma clapped first. Everyone else followed. Later, after the toasts and the paper plates of barbecue and the kids running in circles under the lights, Ethan led Vivian to the front of the house. "One more thing," he said. "If this is another deed," she said, "I will reconsider that, yes." "No more paperwork," he said. Parked at the curb, polished until its paint almost reflected the sky, sat a truck. Not new, not perfect, but solid restored lines and fresh coat of blue. The same model, the same body. On the dashboard behind the glass hung a small piece of metal scorched at the edges. The old license plate. Vivian walked closer, hand rising to her mouth. You kept it, she said. The frame was done for, he said, but some pieces were worth saving. Joe helped me rebuild it in the shop. Figured it deserved a better ending than a junkyard. She touched the hood fingers trailing along the curve. You are giving it to me, she said. It started your second life, he said. Seems fitting. She looked at him, the reflection of the string lights in her eyes. You kept the worst night of my life and turned it into a present, she said. Some nights are like that, he said. Ugly then good later. He opened the driver's side door for her. She climbed in, smoothing her dress under her legs, hands finding the wheel. She closed her eyes for a second, then opened them again. I feel different this time, she said. You are not alone this time, he said. From the yard, Emma shouted that they were missing the first dance. Old Joe yelled back that they could take their time, he had snacks. They returned to the backyard where the music had already started from a small speaker on the porch. Someone had chosen an old song, something with soft guitars and a beat easy to sway to. Ethan pulled Vivian close. Emma wedged herself between them, insisting on being part of the dance. They shifted, adjusting, until the three of them moved together, a little awkward, a lot happy. As they turned under the lights, a few drops of water landed on Ethan's neck. He looked up. A thin, hesitant rain had started barely there at first, then more insistent. Guests laughed, lifting faces to the sky. Someone reached for the plates, worried about the food getting wet, then stopped when no one else seemed to care. It is raining, Emma said, tilting her head back, eyes closed. Of course it is, Ethan said. Vivian smiled, rain catching in her lashes. We started in the rain, she said, and we are still here. Gibor sees, Ethan replied, Emma squeezed their hands. We are waterproof, she declared. They laughed, the sound mixing with the patter on the grass, with the music, with the muffled noises of the neighborhood. The lights glowed against the damp air. The ground was soft under their shoes. The leak in the living room ceiling had been fixed months ago, but the memory of that old rhythm sat gently in the background, like a second heartbeat. They held on to each other as the rain settled in, not harsh, not punishing, just part of the night, part of the place they had made their own. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.